Welcome to episode 2 of Off the Guardrails with Corey and Shri, the podcast dedicated to demystifying AI without losing our souls. We are two AI professionals here to keep the humans in the loop. That's you guys. I'm Corey, currently AI tech lead at US News and World Report, where I've worked for 10 years building products like Best Places to Live. Not here on official business.
Hey, that's good. Hi, I'm Shri, currently an AI professional at US News as well, and a resident researcher. I'm pursuing my PhD in AI and cybersecurity. And yeah, I'm love to be here and talk AI with this guy.
Let's do this. All right, Shri. So first of all, let me pull up the right screen here. So we got a problem, and it's not me and you that have the problem. It's big AI providers, and these big AI providers are I think, very quickly running into a critical capacity problem, and we're seeing a lot of the symptoms right now. And essentially, I think it's going to potentially get worse before it gets better, and I think consumers are going to be seeing more and more of this. So symptom number one. So Google actually rolled out this thing called Agent Smith a while ago, and it's an internal tool that's dedicated to improving their own, like writing code internally for Google. It takes its name from the antagonist in the Matrix. It's part of Google's broader effort to build autonomous agentic systems capable of
Interesting.
handling complex, multi-step tasks with minimal human input. So this is maybe more like Claude work than Claude code. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
this has been so popular at Google that they've had to restrict access. And
Yeah.
so, what that tells me is that Google, who is a titan of technology, who has, God knows how many servers, is having all these issues with capacity potentially. They're
Yeah.
not publicizing it, but you're seeing it here. Symptom number 2, and it's not just Google. That's the thing. So,
Yeah.
number one, Claude's popularity is skyrocketing. I hear about Claude many, many times a week. Everybody I know is using Opus for gosh darn near everything. I hear the word Opus about 4 times a day now. Over time, it's becoming more and more actually useful. And what I mean by that is that us specialists have been using this stuff for a long time pretty effectively, but it required a certain set of sort of particular skills in order to effectively use an LLM in the past. And that's really not true anymore. It's
Yeah.
become practical for anybody to automate their own tasks in whatever way,
Yeah.
So Claude's getting a lot more popular. And at the same time, Anthropic has confirmed that it has been adjusting Claude's usage limits.
Yeah.
And what this means is that during peak times, which means 5 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific, which is 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern time, that so with Claude Code, you get X number of tokens, but you get X divided by some amount. So you get less than X during this time period. So you're incentivized not to use Claude. They don't want you to use Claude, or they don't want as many people using Claude at this time period. Right?
I mean, that's the peak hour of when people start to use it, right? When they are like brainstorming things, especially like us. So yeah, this is a huge change.
I think so. And like Anthropic's very upfront about it. I think other providers not necessarily. And so it's going to be interesting to see where it goes, because now this article is on a related note. It's about how RAM is being bought up so quickly by all of these AI people building out, the AI infrastructure, that if you need a laptop, you better buy it right now, because RAM is just going to get more and more expensive. And I actually,
Exactly.
after reading this, I started shopping for a laptop after this, or at least just, what would I need to pay for, to replace my 5-year-old laptop? So,
Yeah.
and I think, you were saying, Shri, that, maybe there is a little bit of relief from OpenAI.
Yeah. So recently, OpenAI had a commitment to buy up a certain percentage or certain amount of RAM. It was in billions from these companies, especially like companies like Crucial. The thing is, they were not able to meet that commitment, and that caused the RAM prices to drop by almost like $50 on an average. Like a couple of weeks ago, 32 gigs of RAM, DDR5 that is, was $400 something. Right now is like 350. but still way above from its original price of like $50-$60.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not going to get better. We may see temporary sort of reprieves from these price hikes, but this is where it's going. AI is gobbling up all these parts.
Yeah, I can share some like more insight into this. Like the main thing is like we saw this dip and rise even when there was like self driving cars boomed and crypto mining was booming. We saw like a lot of these RAM companies set up like specific fabrication units, and when these like crypto kind of dropped or the self driving kind of usage dropped, they had to close down those like manufacturing units, right? So they are right now, even though they are seeing like a lot of demand, at least until 2028, they are not building those new fabrication units. We as like consumers of like personal PC hardware or any kind of like laptop hardware, we won't see the day of light until 2028 at least. They are going to price gouge it. They are going to stress that demand more as we go forward. So yeah.
And I guess what's so our advice, I mean, or at least my advice, I'm thinking about thinking about this sort of capacity problem is I would advise people to learn how to work with cheaper models. Don't just use Opus all the time. Learn how to optimize your prompts in your work. There are many times where you might be wasting tokens because you're passing too much stuff into it, or you're asking it to do too much in one job. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. What would you advise people to kind of protect themselves?
Yeah, definitely. Like if you apart from what Corey mentioned, you can definitely combine or accumulate a lot of tasks you're doing. So let's say you're working on the front end stuff, especially try to map out or try to understand how you can combine 2 to 3 things together, just so you don't waste like exploration kind of or like redundant tokens doing that. And especially in Claude, if you're using Claude Code, you can do like slash models and use like Opus plan. It is not like directly shown. You can only like in the drop down, you see like Opus, Sonnet, Haiku.
Yeah.
But there is a hidden option called Opus plan that can do like trigger Opus just for planning and Sonnet and Haiku for like actual execution. So that saves a lot of money.
And that matches my personal usage pattern is I want to use the more complicated sort of model Opus for planning, and I want to use the cheaper models for execution. And speaking from experience, Sonnet is a good darn model. So another solution potentially is hosting your own model, of course. And France is actually just signed a contract with Mistral. We talked about Mistral last week in a different context, but Mistral, if you're not familiar, is a French company, and they're based in headquartered in Paris, and they have some really fantastic free to acquire and use AI models. And it says both open source and proprietary. France's Ministry of the Armed Forces has signed an agreement with them. So France is going to have their own, they're going to host their own models on their own infrastructure that is, to them, a domestically created model, which is really interesting.
Yeah, and this also ties into like the our earlier episode where we shared about Mistral Forge. Uh, they do use it to actually like train their own customized model and use them. So yeah, this is, like right now we see it's not only on the consumer side or like enterprise side. Like defense is going to be a huge game changer for artificial intelligence in general.
Great. So they are actively using the Forge application.
Yeah, yeah. That's from what I've read. That's what the inspiration was. Like they were working with like defense contractors, and they saw this like gap in training their own model. That's where like Mistral Forge were born from.
Excellent. Well, keep an eye out for Mistral and other. I think other small AI providers. We're going to see a lot more of them,
Yeah,
and I think we're going to see a lot more things move to the edge. Move to sort of local devices as much as possible. I think that's going to make a big difference.
just tying back this to like our like RAM shortage and like just AI in general. I don't know how many of in the audience might have heard about it. As like Google launched TurboQuant, where they essentially are optimizing how KV caches are done. Essentially, like when these models are invoked with long conversation, it is taking up a lot of memory. It is taking up a lot of like compute. With this like newer approach, it like reduces this resource capacity by 6x, which is like a huge jump. But a lot of people in like the industry say this is going to be revolutionary. This is going to be like this is causing like RAM prices to drop. But that's
Hmm.
truly not the case, because this was like actually released in 2025 by Google. They have already implemented it. And even with that, we are seeing this RAM shortage or like compute shortage in general. And on top of that, we also see like energy crisis right now.
Okay. Well, in other news, do you think the org chart's dead, Shri?
I think so. Honestly, I I would say instead of dead, I would say it is morphed. But I'd love to hear your opinion on it, or what you got to
Yeah,
share.
well, LinkedIn's chief economic opportunity officer thinks it's dead. I
Well, it's
think
LinkedIn.
so. Yeah, I think the org chart is wounded. I think it is changing. It is blurring, and this whole vibe coding thing has really empowered people in a lot of ways to do things that they weren't able to do before, and that includes me. And
Yeah,
primarily before I had these AI coding tools, I was mostly a back-end developer. I could call myself a full stack developer, but I was always hesitant to do so because front end just kind of wasn't my forte. But now I can build a front end. I can have AI help me design it. It doesn't look like total garbage.
yeah,
Well, okay, all of my interfaces worked back in the day. They just didn't look very nice. They were very utilitarian. But now I can have like a nice looking interface. And so what the point of this is that people are able to do things that they haven't been able to do before. And that's true not just of us, but of product and design. Front end
yeah,
developers can now do back end work that they weren't able to do before. I do think that absolutely these, and this article is about how you should work cross functionally. So you should get together a team that is not just developers, not just product people. You should have one of each of those people or more than one of each of those people sitting in a room and working together and working on a project together and doing it in a meaningful way and all interacting with the same tools.
exactly.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think we're already seeing this across the industry for sure. And I have friends who are building things that they would not have been able to build before. People who are not coders who are building apps, actual functional apps that do stuff.
Yeah,
I hope they make money on them. I hope you do, Vinay.
yeah.
So that's been an incredible transformation, and I think the people who are leaning into this stuff are really benefiting from that. It's scary. I think it's really scary to a lot of people too, which I get it.
On the contrary point, yeah, like I think people are scared, but I think it also opens up a lot of opportunity. And as you mentioned, like the lines are getting blurry about like what people do. In a sense, they're not only like isolated to a particular profession. They are like the roles are expanding. And like this was called out by the Nvidia CEO like Jensen, and he did mention that people are going to learn more about like sciences, arts, and a lot of different things, and they don't need to worry about like coding and being truly technical. That age, I don't think it's truly there, but we are closer to it. And I think we are at a good place where we can see those lines getting blurred.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to that point, we pulled up a few a few job postings that are for product managers ostensibly, and you're seeing a lot more development oriented things that are mentioned here. Uh, You're not expected to be a developer as a product manager, but you are expected to sit in a different place than you used to sit. So Shopify was actually the first place I saw this. This was, I think, last fall that a friend shared this with me, and right here under qualifications it says proficiency with AI tools like Cursor and Claude Code. So
That's
that means
crazy.
that, yeah, that you are expected as a product manager, and for those who don't know what a product manager does normally or previously, I should say, this is the new
Yeah,
normal.
yeah,
Previously, a product manager would essentially decide the direction of a product, make sure that it is executed, make sure we're on target for these things. They're essentially like the vision, the idea person in a lot of ways.
yeah,
And they're somebody that we as developers work closely with, but they're not somebody who used to really participate in the development cycle as somebody
yes,
who directly like contributed to code. That has changed. That is completely different. And I'm
exactly.
very curious how this is working out at Shopify. I'm sure it's,
Yeah,
this, I know Shopify in particular is very like progressive about their processes and
yeah.
things. But
No,
yeah, we're seeing
especially with
this.
like in terms of this, as I have seen in my personal experience that when we do communicate with the product person or the product manager, especially, there are gaps in communication about what the end goal is or what the business logic might look like. And then translating it into code is a way different thing, right? Whereas if they come up with like, hey, this is a prototype I built, or this is where I want to be, and you guys can make it better technically, then yeah, that changes the timeline, that changes the approach, that changes like everything in the process, right?
And I think an important point, though, that we haven't mentioned is that this doesn't mean specialization is dead. This doesn't mean that your specialized knowledge, like my knowledge about development and technology, that's still incredibly valuable.
Yeah,
And essentially, it just means that I can contribute to other parts, but I don't have the brain bandwidth to be thinking about the things the product person actually needs to be thinking about, which is our users, the UX, like the usability of our site, and things like that. And that's where their experience really shines. And I think it's a cool way to work together. I'm really kind of excited to see where things go. But yeah, man, what do you got?
so this is a funny thing. Apparently there was a poll within like American workforce, and they say like 15% of Americans would be willing to work for an AI boss, which is like superly mind-blowing, right?
So here's my question though, Shri. Is this people saying that they want to work for AI, or are they saying they don't want to work for their boss?
That's a really tricky question, but I'm going to be diplomatic, and this says they would be willing to work for an AI boss.
That's true. That's fair.
Yeah,
That's fair. They would be willing to.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, how do you feel about that?
Personally, um I'm pretty neutral. Like I do see the cons of relying on an AI for critical decision. And for me, a boss or like someone superior to me would have knowledge and experience about critical decision points and could help me do that. Personally, I don't see the current AI models or current AI agents to be that mature to make those decision points or help me make those decisions. So yeah, I would lean more to not being comfortable doing that, but I'm
Yeah,
neutral and open to the idea.
yeah, yeah. It would. I think it has a ways to go before I'm
Yeah,
completely comfortable with it.
yeah,
I and gosh, there's been so many situations where having a human on the other side of that equation is really important.
yeah,
Like something is going on in your life and you need advice or help. I would hate to be chatting with a chatbot at that point. And
yeah,
my only alternative being, talking to somebody in a centralized department like HR. So yeah, that would be my concern. There needs to be a
yeah.
human in the loop somewhere. Maybe the AI does some tasks that the boss would do, but I don't want the AI to be deciding things, that
Yeah.
affect my life.
To be honest, like while this like poll and everything does a good job of like mentioning things, one thing it does highlight is that a lot of the people or like the people who took the survey who said actually they would be comfortable with an AI boss were early adopters of AI like agents and tools and stuff, whereas like rest of them were like pretty mature and they said no. So I think it's more of like experience versus experience and like maturity of these AI tools that
So
help you
wait,
make that decision.
you're saying the people who were more familiar with AI were more hesitant, or the more people, or
No, who were familiar with an AI were hesitant. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, same. I've been working with it for years. I have trust issues, but
Yeah,
maybe that'll change.
yeah. We'll see. We'll see. I'll probably see some AI boss later on.
Yeah, you better have some good guardrails. We need good guardrails, people. Okay.
Yep. Yep. And on to some interesting thing as well. But yeah, as people might have already heard, and it was all over the news, Instagram, whatever social media you were using, Anthropic literally had their Claude Code source code leaked through an NPM package map, which was surprising for firstly. I think like Anthropic being such a big organization and being a forefront voice of like security and stuff, this was truly a
Yeah.
mishap. And
Yeah.
the main thing here, like especially like within this blog, what it says like they don't mind having this like their source code to be out in public. They do obviously have IP and stuff that they want to protect, but the main thing was like they mistakenly tried to take down like do DCMA strikes on these new cloud repos, and GitHub and Anthropic were having like a lot of back and forth of taking down these repos in a sense, and uh, eventually GitHub being neutral, they stopped these DCMA takedowns, and uh, they were okay with having like multiple like multiple copies of this source code essentially.
Interesting.
But the main
So
thing
th-
is like,
so
sorry,
so this
go ahead.
code is the code for the Claude Code client. This is not any code for the nothing related to the model itself. It's code that uses the model essentially.
Yeah, yeah, uses the model and the framework for how it works with the model.
Yeah. Has anybody like discovered anything? I mean, I know I've seen a few sort of fun, whimsical things people have seen, but is there
Yeah.
any like, major interesting things people have discovered?
The major thing is like biggest thing personally I found is like planning mode. So when you especially use like Opus Plan and stuff, the thinking is, or the chain of thought that it specifically uses is very dynamic in the sense it is able to identify what kind of query it is, what kind of code or files you're working with, and adjust that on demand or on the fly. One thing to do note is with Anthropic model specifically, you don't have like thinking parameter that you can set. You have an effort parameter that you can essentially set, which kind of
Oh,
tells you like, hey, this is my budget of how much I want to spend on reasoning tokens, whereas this is like where I don't want to spend. So you can like dynamically adjust that and work on complex problems more and not waste tokens there. Like that was the biggest part. The other thing is obviously like Anthropic being Anthropic, their like security and like guardrails were pretty consistent as compared to like open source alternatives like open code. Um, yeah, like they do have like prompt checks, injection checks, SQL injection checks, and all
okay.
that stuff. Yeah.
Hey, maybe some open source code will improve their security and their safety as a result of this.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing to note is like a quirky thing within the code itself, they are like literally parsing like swear words as a keys before the prompt is being set. And you actually see if any of the like swear words are detected in the prompt by keyword match, it literally just sends out a default text. Yeah, they're not using any LLM calls, nothing else. They're plain Python function.
So when you swear at it, it just returns some string saying, "Hey,
Yeah,
don't swear
exactly.
at me, sir. Excuse me. This is a Wendy's, sir."
I know, right?
That's
But
funny.
yeah,
I mean, and that's interesting that it's like hard coded. Like there's things that are hard coded in this sort of prestigious AI company's code.
yeah.
And I mean, from what I understand, also there's some blame on like the vibe coding aspect of this. Is that right?
Yeah, that was the main part of it. Essential part, they blame the human factor of it, of their process, and I personally think that's not the case. I think it's a problem of compliance and their testing or like the CI/CD process essentially. How like developers are able to push things out to prod. They need like rigorous checks. I think they took a misstep in that, or maybe like glanced over it. I think. But
Yeah.
yeah, the main takeaway is that you should have firm and strict process that your team works with. It
Yeah.
can be custom to your own organization and your policies, but it should be there.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you need humans reviewing that code and looking at it and making and thinking about what we're doing, and somebody needs to be pressing that button. Like you can't be taking the humans out of the loop. I mean,
Exactly.
it sounds like they learned a tough lesson, and I would bet you that they will be improving their processes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. And with like the IPO and stuff looming over them, that is something that they are going to need like needing to fix. But yeah, it's a race.
It is a race. There's a lot of IPOs coming up, huh?
Yeah, right.
Well, I don't have any. Yeah, I don't own any of those businesses, sadly, but that's all right. That's all right. Well, Shri, what's coming up next week? What are we going to talk about next time?
We have some interesting stuff to talk about, especially with how you think about using AI systems. The main part is like I want to talk about like data governance
Yeah,
that we are seeing, and like especially in the industry, it is something that a lot of organizations are struggling with.
huge
Even
deal.
before you think about deploying AI systems, you need to have the data that you need to work with. You need to have access policies. And as we see with Anthropic example, you need like good governance and compliance things, right? So that's on the docket. The next thing is obviously like uh, driving off like of autonomous agents and on-prem agents. We have KiloClaw. It is a competitor to Mistral Forge, and that can help you deploy custom AI agents.
Who's that
Yeah,
from?
it's called KiloClaw. The company
Yeah,
is I'm not sure who developed KiloClaw, but I'll
they're
have to
going
dig
after
that.
that lobster theme, though, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Everybody has
I
claws now.
see. I see what they're doing. I see what they're doing. It's
Yep.
cool. I like a theme. I like a good theme. Although I start confusing the names after a while. Like everything is cloud something on like AWS and all these other big providers, and I get very confused. Cloud formation and cloud front is a whole other thing. It's a very confusing
Yeah.
world.
Don't get me started about Google. So
Nope. 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 Alrighty, sir. Well, it has been fun talking AI with you, and if you at home are still watching, we appreciate you. Be sure and hit that like and subscribe button. Shri, you got any last final words of the week for everybody? Any wisdom?
no, just keep rocking and put the humans in the loop as always.
Keep it real. Keep those humans in the loop. All right, y'all take care. We'll see you next week.
You guys, see you.